โมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนัมมัสสามิ Last week we celebrated Visakha Puja, the day that we remember the birth, enlightenment and parinibbana of the Buddha. And that means in another day it will be the day we call Attami Puja. This is the day we remember the cremation of the Buddha after his parinibbana. And parinibbana means death. It's the formal way of describing the death of the Buddha. They say when his 5 khandhas were extinguished, never to reform, never to return. But he was a human being, so he had a body, a corpse. And so after he died, the Venerable Ananda, they say Venerable Ananda wrapped his body in the finest cloth available, and I'm sure the Buddha had many sponsors who came forward to provide cloth. His body was wrapped and preserved and then laid out, and a funeral pyre was built. And the story goes that the first attempt they made to light the funeral pyre with the Buddha's body on, the fire didn't start. And the explanation is that Venerable Mahakassapa, one of his senior disciples, was at that time walking with all his students, monks, coming back, having heard the news, or having guessed, we don't even know that he heard the news, but guessed that the Buddha maybe was close to death or had died. So he was walking to try to get back to where the Buddha was, and he hadn't arrived yet. So they say the devas prevented the fire from starting when they first lit it, and waited until Mahakassapa arrived, and then the fire began and the Buddha was cremated. The story also says that there were 8 leading kings or leaders of the clans of the people in northeast India, in that part of northeast India, were all waiting. They all had representatives and probably soldiers waiting to collect the ashes, or their share of the ashes of the Buddha, and everybody wanted a share, and there was some concern that they would actually fight over the bone relics, the ashes of the Buddha after the cremation. So there was a Brahmin, a great diplomat, Dona the Brahmin, managed to get everybody on board and talk about the benefits of sharing the relics. amongst the leading families, ruling families, rather than fighting over them, which would be like dishonoring the name of the Buddha, an inappropriate way to respond to the death of the Buddha. They should discuss it and share the ashes of the Buddha so that they could be taken away to the respective kingdoms. And the Buddha in his lifetime had said it's appropriate to build a stupa, a chetya, and house the ashes, the relics of a Buddha or an Arahant. So even the Buddha died and people expressed their grief and their attachment to the Buddha. And those people who expressed their grief strongly, they say, were still ordinary unenlightened people. Even some monks were crying, and of course many lay people were grief-stricken and expressed their grief in different ways. So these ruling families still had their attachment for the Buddha, and they wanted to keep some of the ashes of the Buddha out of their love and respect for him, but it was mixed up with attachment. Perhaps this is why the Buddha, the very last teaching of the Buddha that we just chanted tonight, Pajjima Awada, the Buddha is pointing out that all conditions are impermanent. Vaya Dhamma Sankhara. That means physical things, this human body, all the things of the world, the material things, the buildings and the things we use as in our life, as well as mountains and trees and the things of the world. They're all impermanent, subject to change. And apamadena sampateta, because of that, because everything is subject to change, impermanent, we should continue to practice with heedfulness and bring our practice to completion. So bring the mind to the point where it knows and sees, has clear knowledge and vision of the way things are. That all physical and mental phenomena are impermanent. Mental phenomena, it's thoughts and feelings, memories, emotions, moods. They arise, they pass away. And this is the simple teaching that the Buddha gave to the world, that is, gives us the potential for awakening to the truth, coming out of what he said is intoxication with the world. We're intoxicated, deluded by, caught up in our attachment to this body, to our feelings and thoughts and emotions, and to the world around us, to other people, our families and friends, and to our possessions and everything. We attach and we become intoxicated. But this simple teaching that all conditions are impermanent, it sobers us up or wakes us up to the truth. So it's something that the Buddha encouraged us to reflect on every day, the impermanent nature of physical and mental things. On one occasion he asked his attendant monk, Venerable Ananda, how often do you recollect death, the impermanence of life? And there are various answers to this recorded, but probably the most common one is he answered 7 times a day. And the Buddha said, too little, too few. The Buddha recollects death every in-breath and every out-breath, because that's the nature of physical and mental phenomena. They're impermanent. They're as if dying all the time, every moment. Thoughts arise in our mind, and then they pass away. They're born and then they die. Feelings and sensations arise and pass away every moment through our day, through our life. They're born and then they die. The physical body is constantly changing. Cells are coming into existence, dividing, dying off. They're born and they die every moment. So with every breath, the Buddha was mindful of impermanence and the uncertainty of life. Every moment of every day, somebody or some animal dies somewhere in the world. At this very moment, there'll be people dying from all kinds of different causes. People are being born every day. But we tend to focus on birth more than death, don't we? It's the nature of our intoxication, our delusion. We're always looking for the next thing to do, the next experience, the next pleasure, the next interesting thing, the next thing that will bring us some benefit, some gain, some profit, some money. As human beings, we tend to be intoxicated with birth, and we shy away from death. We hide it away. Literally, we don't want to see it, think about it, talk about it. We're afraid the more we talk about it, the quicker it will happen to us. But we love to talk about birth. We always looking for the next in-breath. And we breathe in. The out-breath, already we forget. And you notice if you meditate, you may establish mindfulness on the in-breath. You're trying to be mindful, be aware of your in-breath. You're doing mindfulness of breathing meditation. But before you've breathed out, already you've lost awareness. You're caught up in the next thought. You're distracted, or you're falling asleep. We don't get excited by out-breaths. We're only really interested in the next in-breath. In the same way we're interested in the next birth, but we don't like to think about death. But the Buddha defines somebody who's heedful, this quality apamada, somebody who is heedful, they're mindful of impermanence. They're mindful, they're heedful of the uncertainty of life, the impermanence of life. They're not deluded, they're not intoxicated with the world. They know everything can change very quickly. Death can come at a moment's notice. And this word apamada, heedfulness, the Buddha said it, all the other teachings that he gave fit into this one quality of mind, heedfulness, just as the same way as all the footprints of the animals in the forest or the jungle fit into the footprint of an elephant. If you've ever seen an elephant's footprint in soft earth, it's like somebody's taken a big bucket and just pressed it down into the earth. It's huge. If you don't see where you're stepping, you step into it, you trip over. It's so deep and so big. Big hole in the ground. In the same way, this quality of heedfulness is big, it's deep, it's all-encompassing, meaning all the other teachings fit within it. Teachings on generosity, sila or virtue, mindfulness, cultivating insight, wisdom, they all fit within the one quality of heedfulness. If you're heedful, then you're paying attention to the truth. You're observing, witnessing the truth. It's the opposite of unheedful or heedless. When we're heedless, we're drunk, intoxicated. So we forget the truth. We forget that things are impermanent. We forget that this thought, that your train of thought you're getting caught up in as you meditate, will pass. It's impermanent. You forget that, so you pick it up and go with it, run with it. This is why we find it so hard to maintain mindfulness when we meditate. Because every new thought that comes up into the mind seems important. And so we start thinking about the future, or getting lost in how we think about the past, what we feel about the past. We miss the good things. We get irritated or annoyed with the bad things that we remember. If it's the future, we get caught into anxiety about what may or may not happen. We're expecting good things to happen. We're hoping for good things to happen. And afraid of what might happen that is not to our liking. But the important thing is we get caught into the next thought and we get lost, or we say intoxicated with it. We'll be stimulated by something, a memory or a sense impression. We see something that we like and we start thinking about it. We see something we don't like and we start thinking about it. The details of the thoughts, the information, the perceptions, well, they'll vary. But the common denominator, the common thing is that we get lost or intoxicated with each thought. You notice when you're meditating, you may have this sort of feeling of restless boredom because you haven't established mindfulness on the breath or whatever your object is. And with that restlessness, you're looking for the next thing to think about. So people in monasteries are often like this. The monastery is a quiet place, there's not much happening. So they just want anything to think about. However mundane, however foolish, silly, anything just to fill the moment, fill the mind up. If we're at home, we don't need to do that so much because we've got external things to latch onto. So people turn the TV on or the computer on or scroll on their phone without any real purpose. It's just to fill the void. And that's like getting caught into birth again. Another moment of birth. Another thought, another image, another bit of information to focus on. And the mind gets lost in it. We say intoxicated. We get intoxicated by the feelings we get back from our sense impressions. So even pain intoxicates us because we don't like it. As long as we're not mindful, we attach to it, we crave to get away from painful feelings, painful experiences, and they intoxicate us in that way. We want to get rid of them, and that's still holding on. When we lose our awareness and we're not seeing impermanence, we hold on even to painful experiences. When you're heedful and you're mindful, then a painful experience is something you can let go of. You don't have to hold on to it, get caught up into it. You know it and you let it go. But when we're not heedful, we're heedless, we grasp hold of it and we identify with it and build it up into something. So it's another form of birth. Even painful things, unpleasant things, give birth to craving and attachment, and we identify with them and hold on to them. So whether it's pleasure or pain, if we're not heedful, we get caught up into that experience. And all the thoughts and the memories and the feelings and the views and opinions forming around it. And we can become intoxicated. And when we're bored, then anything will do to fill the mind, so we allow our mind to pick up all kinds of rubbish, useless information, harmful stuff. When you're in that kind of heedless state, anything is better than nothing. So you'll watch any meaningless TV program, or you'll talk to somebody about anything just to fill the airwaves, fill the void, even if it's something foolish or even harmful, like gossip or backstabbing other people or looking at the world negatively. And we talk about something just to fill our mind with something. And it's endless because the varieties and the different formations that can be found in the world are just endless, because they're coming from our imagination and the creative way of the mind. So we constantly are filling the mind with stuff. And it doesn't mean to say all thought or all information, all sense impressions are useless or harmful. What I'm talking about here is the quality of heedlessness, where we follow trains of thought, get caught up into our reactions of pleasure and pain without guidance, without mindfulness, without wisdom guiding us. Then they become a cause of suffering for us. When you're really desperate for something, then you'll put anything into your mouth to eat, just to get a bit of food stimulation or taste. You'll smell anything, you'll look at anything, just for something to look at. It's all what we call birth, and it's a form of intoxication. Intoxication with this body and the mind that senses things. We're always looking for the next thing, the next experience. You notice when you meditate and your mindfulness becomes stronger and your mind settles down, the reason you feel more calm and peaceful is because you've let go of some of that wanting, some of the intoxication. And you also get stronger in your mind. Mindfulness improves, you become stronger, so you can even bear with difficult experiences, pain in the body, unpleasant memories, negative thoughts that arise. You can bear with them because your mind is stronger and mindful and it knows how to let go. And then you can experience some of the heedfulness that the Buddha was talking about. When you know that you can let go, a lot of joy comes from that. Happiness, contentment. You realize you don't have to hold on to things so much, and you don't have to look around for the next experience so much. You can be more content in the present moment with whatever there is. Even when you're having to put up with an unpleasant memory or a mood of disappointment, if you establish heedfulness, mindfulness and awareness and understanding, you know it's just temporary. So you're no longer intoxicated by it, even when things go wrong. Even when an unpleasant thing happens. It's not what you want, but you can tolerate it because you know it's impermanent and you're heedful in that moment. So heedfulness liberates us from suffering. Makes us pay attention to the way things are. And some people think that when you contemplate the impermanence of life or death, or the fact that nothing you have lasts, people you know don't last forever, they think it will make you depressed. And you may become depressed sometimes. But the whole point is, if you're practicing heedfulness and you're reflecting on the true nature of things, even the thought or the mood of depression is impermanent. And you can use exactly the same insight to help free your mind from that. So you might sometimes feel down, feel depressed, based on some situation or some problem that's arisen in your life. But then you establish the insight, this too is impermanent. That's heedfulness in practice. So you're heedful of your own mood of disappointment, unhappiness. It changes. You know, we've all been unhappy and disappointed before. You know if it arises again from some situation, it will also pass. So the Buddha was encouraging us to use the true nature of things to our advantage, to help us see the truth, to free our mind from this state of endless intoxication, seeking and getting addicted to pleasure and running away from and reacting with aversion to pain. The mind of heedfulness knows the way things are, is heedful, is aware of the dangers. The Buddha said, we attach to pleasure and pain, it's dangerous for us because it deludes us. A state of intoxication is dangerous, just like when they say don't drive a car intoxicated because it's dangerous. It's easy to crash, it's easy to misjudge distance and lose control. In the same way, when we're looking at our mind and our life, it's easy to have suffering, experience suffering when you're heedless, when you're not mindful, when you're not paying attention to what you're thinking, saying, doing, when you're not paying attention to the truth. It's easy to fall into suffering. There's danger there. So this one concept, one quality of mind, when cultivated, protects us and liberates us at the same time. Protects us from the danger of intoxication, attachment, and liberates us from the causes of suffering. You might just ask yourself, do you like suffering? And nobody likes suffering. Therefore, be heedful. Keep cultivating this quality through your life. And how we practice heedfulness will depend on the situation. So sometimes it's being very mindful of what you're doing, what you're saying, not to make decisions that come back on you and lead to pain and suffering for yourself or others. Sometimes it's just being mindful of what you're thinking, questioning what you're thinking, this way of thinking, this way of viewing things. Is this really in line with the truth? Is this going to lead to happiness, or is it leading to more suffering, more conflict with other people, more self-criticism, more doubt? Or does it lead to a sense of well-being coming from understanding, clarity, mindfulness? Many, many good qualities are encompassed within heedfulness. The whole, you could say, the whole of the Buddhist path is. So that's many, many aspects of our life. How we relate to the material world, how we use the things of the world, material things, how we earn a living, how we spend money, how we use up the resources of the world that we come into contact with, how we relate to other people, our speech, our actions, how skillful it is, how unskillful it is, and then how we relate to ourselves, particularly how we relate to our own mental activity and develop our own inner peace and well-being. All of this is embraced by the quality of heedfulness. Appamada. One who is heedful is somebody who values their life, values human life. If you value your human life, then you'll tend to value other people's lives. So it makes you more sensitive and compassionate to others. So if you're aware of how you don't like pain and you want to free yourself from pain, suffering, other people will want to free themselves from pain and suffering. So when the Buddha became enlightened on that night, Visakha Puja, all those years ago, his awakening experience was one that he saw the nature of the mental defilements, greed, anger, delusion, how they are the cause of suffering. By abandoning greed, anger and delusion, he purified his mind from the causes of suffering. But at the same time, he also gained great insight. Because if you free your mind from delusion, what's left is clarity, insight, wisdom, true knowledge and vision of the way things are. And with that came great compassion, because he understood the truth, and the truth is universal. So it's the same for me, you, anyone in this world. So having awakened to the truth, then the Buddha was free. He could share that truth with us. And that was his gift to us. So 8 days after the Buddha, we say, entered parinibbana, he died, passed away, they cremated his body in Kushinara, northeast India. You can still go there today and visit the site, and you'll see in the jetty there's a beautiful stone reclining Buddha where the cremation took place. People go there, some people just find it so poignant, so kind of sobering. They sober up from their intoxication for a while. Often tears come. It's a very powerful place. People will go there and they meditate, or they circumambulate, carry flowers and incense around the stone reclining Buddha. And it really draws your mind close to the Buddha and his teachings. And this quality of heedfulness arises. And you realize that everything in this world is impermanent, so it's not to be grasped at, clung to. The most important thing is freeing your mind from delusion, from attachment. This is the Buddha's encouragement to us, the very last teaching to us. So all conditions are impermanent. Continue to practice. Bring this quality of heedfulness to completion. Meaning bringing the factors of the Eightfold Noble Path to completion. Sila, Samadhi, Panya, virtue, meditation, wisdom, insight. When we do that, we'll free our mind from this cycle of birth and death, always seeking more birth, always fearing death. This is what we call true happiness. So I'll leave you with these reflections tonight on reflecting on Atami Bucha.